All right, our next speaker this afternoon is Micaela Berglund, who comes to us from Pomona, where she'll be a rising senior this year. Micaela's been working over the summer with Allison, and she'll tell us about her project investigating low-metallicity massive star populations and local analogs of high-redshift star-forming galaxies. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
Awesome. Thanks, Gwen. And I'd also like to extend a special thank you to you, Allison, and all the other staff members at Carnegie who helped make this opportunity possible. I'm so excited to be able to share my research with you today. So this was my first summer working with Allison, but it's my second project in extragalactic astronomy. And one of the principal goals of extragalactic astronomy is learning about the properties of galaxies, like their shape. Are they elliptical, spiral, irregular? Their chemical composition. Are they metal poor or metal rich? Their luminosity, radius, temperature, star formation rate. All of these properties are relatively easy to glean for galaxies that are in the nearby universe. But it's also imperative that we look at galaxies far away because they tell us about how galaxies evolved over time. And it's a lot harder for us to find the physical properties from what we're looking at for galaxies that are really far away. So we often rely on models. Specifically, Allison and I are interested in photoionization models. Now, what does that mean? Let's break it down. Photoionization happens when you have an excited material. So you have hot gas or stars in a galaxy. And in all of the atoms in that gas or stars, you have electrons falling from one quantum mechanical level to another. And as they fall, they emit a photon. That photon's energy determines its wavelength. So from photoionization, we get emission line spectrums. Basically, if you have a spectrum, you can see the different chemicals in the galaxy from it. And models are something like this. This is a model that was created in 2009. In inputs, you put stellar population, nebular geometry, and chemical composition. Then you get out of it an emission line spectrum. If you can compare that emission line spectrum to an observed emission line spectrum, you can also find the ionization structure and the physical conditions of a galaxy. One of the biggest uncertainties in using these models is the properties of the massive stars. Metal poor massive stars are particularly less well known than their metal rich counterparts. They're not common in the local universe, so we have a lot less data about them, and therefore our models are less robust. Massive stars are incredibly important, though, in galaxies. They have a significant influence on the observables because they're such strong ionizers. So we have these galaxies that are far away that we want to have better models for. But we can't just look at the galaxies and learn more. We don't have the observational ability to do that robustly now. So what we do is we find what we call local analogs. We find galaxies that are near to us that have similar extreme spectral fingerprints as the galaxies that are far away. So we look at those galaxies, we make the models better, and then hopefully we have a better picture of the high redshift galaxies in the end. We're selecting our data based on high redshift galaxies and those implications, but really this can be used for galaxies of all redshifts. So here we're providing analysis of local analogs for extreme star forming environments that can be used to improve photoionization models. A few years ago, my advisor, Allison, selected what we call the SDSS twins. This is our local analog sample. They're low redshift galaxies with ionization and excitation conditions consistent with the environments of high redshift galaxies. And we chose them, or she chose them, from a combination of line ratios that isolates the properties of the massive stars. So this is how we selected the stars. On the y-axis, we have increasing ionization, and on the x-axis, we have increasing spectral hardness. Where we have all the green dots, those are the Keck Baryonic Structure Survey, KBSS, high redshift galaxies that we're interested in. And then the yellow squares are the low redshift Sloan Digital Sky Survey, SDSS, twins. At the points on this plot where the blue dots and the orange squares overlap, we say that those are our local analogs. They have similar spectral fingerprints, particularly for the massive stars. We care the most about the properties of the massive stars. And if you've heard of green peas, this is a related but different analog sample. So this is where I came in. This summer, my job was to calculate emission line measurements for our 21 SDSS twins, and then create a diagnostic line ratio diagram from that. So I started by downloading all the spectra from SDSS, all the ones we were interested in. Then I subtracted the continuum emission, and I found and labeled the emission lines. So here we have on the x-axis the wavelength, and on the y-axis we have the flux. The blue line is our data, and you can see labeled the oxygen, neon, helium that we're interested in. So for each of those emission lines, we created a Gaussian model. Essentially, we took the pixelated emission line you see there, and we smoothed it out to make it nice and easy to integrate. We calculated the integrals of each emission line in each SDSS galaxy, and basically made a big table of all of our data. Then we could divide the rows of that table to calculate the line flux ratios. And then we could use those line flux ratios to plot them on the diagnostic line ratio diagram. So this is the diagnostic line ratio diagram that we made. It's called a Bpt diagram, and it's used to distinguish the ionization mechanism of nebular gas. On the y-axis, you'll see O3 over H beta. That's a measure of ionization and excitation. And on the x-axis, you'll have the measure of metallicity, which is N2 over H alpha. The red line shows the maximal starburst contribution, and the purple line separates the purely star-forming objects from the AGN. So this is our Bpt diagram. You see the 21 blue dots. Those are our SDSS twin galaxies. The gray dots behind them are all of the SDSS sample that we chose the SDSS twins from. And then the dotted black line is the Bpt fit for the KBSS galaxies, the high-redshift galaxies. So that's where those galaxies would fall had they been plotted here. And let's zoom in a little bit and take a closer look. The SDSS twins fall in the star-forming region above the average SDSS sample and below the KBSS ridgeline. The KBSS and SDSS samples are offset, as we would expect from theoretical predictions. And the twins and KBSS data aren't quite overlapping. And that's because the Bpt diagram is showing us a combination of the effects of the stars and the gas. And this inspires collection of higher resolution spectra so that we can disentangle the data and find a local analog that matches more perfectly. And this leads into some incredibly exciting future work. As I said, multiple physical changes can result in a similar shift on the Bpt diagram. So we want to learn about the galaxy properties independently. We want to parse out this information. There's also a discrepancy. We're seeing too much, or we're seeing too little helium-2. So there's a lack of helium-2 in the SDSS twin spectra, but we have to get better spectra so that we can see the helium-2. That's why we selected those 21 of the SDSS twins particularly. Helium-2 is really important because it's sensitive to the extreme properties of massive stars because of its high ionization potential. And the analysis of this line isn't possible yet because we don't have good enough data. So observational analysis like this will remain critical as we build more telescopes, get tons of new information from all the new telescopes coming out, and we'll want to continue improving models along the way. So projects like this are just crucial. In summary, low metallicity massive stars are common in high redshift galaxies, where research relies on models to learn about gas chemistry and star properties. One of the primary uncertainties in extragalactic models are the properties of the massive stars. And here we present preliminary results for 21 low metallicity star-forming analogs that can be used to improve models. We present a diagnostic line ratio diagram that shows that the SDSS twins fall in the star-forming region higher than the rest of the SDSS data and below the KBSS ridgeline. And the goal of this research and future related investigations is to improve photoionization models of star-forming galaxies. And that is what I did this summer. What questions can I answer for you?
Nice job, Micaela. All right, what questions do we have?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Alex.
Hi, Micaela. I'm just wondering, so does that mean that the twins are, maybe I misunderstood, does that mean the twins are not quite twins if they fall in between?
That's a good question, Alex. I'll reference one of my slides. So the SDSS twins are spectroscopically similar based on the R32O32 plane, which means that they're spectroscopically similar when we're talking about their massive star populations, which is what we care about. On the Bpt diagram, we see that the conditions of the gas, et cetera, are not, they don't quite add up to the same location on the Bpt diagram, but they're twins for the reasons that we hoped they would be twins. Does that answer your question?
Yes, that does. That's very helpful. Thank you so much.
Any other question for Micaela? All right, very nice job.
Thank you so much.